So I'll start with problems on truss. I hope PPT is visible now. PPT? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Then I'll put it in the full mode. So in the last class, we are discussing about the problem. So here nodes are not continuous. So then there may be slight differences compared to most of the time they don't give the node number as well as element number. In only few examination they asked node number and element number in the question itself. So if you give the node number and element number in the question itself, so for the evaluator, one who evaluate your answer booklet, for them it will be easy because they'll get common answer, common stiffness matrix. For that reason, they'll give. Otherwise, different students use different node numbering scheme. Then different students will get different stiffness matrix. That to avoid that, during question paper setting itself, some examiner they may give the node number. So in such cases, you have to stick on to the node number. As per the given node number, you have to write the element connectivity table. This is the element connectivity table. So node numbers are given, and directions, especially there are ith node and jth node. So once you say ith node, it is the starting node. The jth node is ending node. So that ith node and jth node we can define, but for our convenience, either we are going in the clockwise direction or in the counterclockwise direction. So you have started from element 1, this upper element or inclined element is element 1. So you are coming in the clockwise direction. So hence node 2 is the initial node or ith node. So I am shown one more diagram here. Node 2, I put 3 small arrows. Those 3 small arrows represent the directions. So this is the 2 is the ith node and 1 is jth node. Same thing is written 2 and 1. So I am coming in the same clockwise direction. Then for the element 2, so ith node will be, because I have shown the arrow towards left for the element 2, that means that indicates that the node 1 is the ith node and node 3 is the jth node. So now after connecting the element connectivity table, so by trigonometric concept or by coordinates, by knowing the coordinates, we can get the length of the element. After getting the length of the element, direction cosines are important. So again, when you're writing the direction cosine as far as possible, so write the element separately. Once again, I have written the element 1 here. So element 1, I have shown the arrows also that indicate that this is the ith node and this is the jth node. The second node is ith node, one is jth node. Accordingly, you have written the formula, and you have to remember this formula. So that is L is direction cosine. It is nothing but a cos theta. So cos theta is expressed, or L is expressed in terms of xj minus xi divided by L1. But sometimes in the examination intention or even test also, instead of writing xj minus xi, you might write yj minus ya, then it will be totally wrong. It should be a little bit careful. That in general, you have to remember L is expressed in terms of x, and m it is expressed in terms of y. And we have the formula xj minus xi and yj minus yi divided by li. From those things, you are getting the direction cosine. As far as possible, in the stiffness matrix, so whatever may be the type of problem, there may be 8 to 10 problems are solved in the local textbooks also. So then better to write, calculate the values of L1 square separately, M square separately, and LM separately. You can save time instead of writing the whole stiffness matrix twice or thrice for each and every stages of calculation. So better to write these L square separately, M square beginning itself, and this multiplication of factor also you can find out separately. So now, other than that, after getting all the values, you have to give the degrees of freedom for the stiffness matrix. So degrees of the freedom for the stiffness matrix. So you should be very careful. It is not just 1, 2, 3, 4. What you have done for the beam, what you have done for the bar, but here, so depending upon the ith node and jth node, so order of the stiffness matrix will be changes. So as per this problem is considered, and element 1 is considered, the ith node is start from 2. So ith node is 2, or first node is 2, and final node is 1. for ith node, degrees of freedom is are Q3 and Q4. For jth node, the degrees of freedoms are Q1 and Q2. So that means you are in the stiffness matrix. So your degrees of freedom start from ith node. As for the element 1 is considered, ith node degrees of freedoms are Q3, Q4. So your stiffness matrix order start from 3, 4. Then for the second node, the degrees of freedoms are 1, 2. Hence, the order of the stiffness matrix is, the order of the stiffness matrix is always 4 by 4 only. But degrees of freedom for the stiffness matrix is 3, 4, 1, 2. Not it is 1, 2, 3, 4. But most of the time in the bars, the order of the stiffness matrix, this DOF, what you mentioned in the stiffness matrix will be 1, 2, 3, 4 you are writing, but it is, that order is not holds good for this type of problem that you have to remember. In the similar way, you have to do it for the second element. So when you come to second element, so again, second element I am not shown, I think. Second element is shown here. Second element, your ith node is 1 and jth node is 3. The degrees of freedom for ith node is Q1 and Q2, and jth node is Q5 and Q6. That means the second element, the ith node is 1, corresponding degrees of freedom or degrees of freedoms are nothing but the element 1, node 1 can move along x direction, or displacement of the node 1 along x direction is given by Q1. The displacement of the node 1 along y direction is given by Q2. Those are nothing but a displacement or deformation. In the similar way, for the node 3, the degrees of freedoms are nothing but node 3 is moved along x direction by the distance Q5, and same node 3 is moved along y direction by a distance Q6. Hence, degrees of freedom for the element 2 is 1, 2, not 3, 4. It is 5, 6. That part you should be very careful. So for the element 1, because element 1, the ith node is node 1. For node 1, corresponding DOFs are 1 and 2, and second node or jth node is node 3, corresponding DOFs are 5 and 6. Hence, the DOF, complete DOF for the element 2 is 1, 2, 5, 6, not it is 1, 2, 5, 6, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4. That part you have to, that part, there is a difference from previous problem to this problem. Again, 1, 2, 5, 6. Now, when you're writing the stiffness matrix, complete the stiffness matrix or global stiffness matrix also, there are three nodes. So each node is having 2 degrees of freedom. The total order of the stiffness matrix is the 6 by 6. But if it is 3 nodes in the case of bar element, the order of the stiffness matrix, final order of the stiffness matrix will be the 3 by 3. But in the case of bar element, so I am revising some amount of previous topics also. In the case of bar element, each node is having only 1 degrees of freedom. That is Q1, Q2, Q3, etc. But hence, so there are 3 nodes into each node is having 1 DOF. Hence, order of the stiffness matrix is 3 by 3. But in the case of truss, for the same 3 node truss element, so each node is having 2 degrees of freedom. 2 degrees of freedom into 3 nodes. The finally order will be the 6 by 6. So I have written some those together here, K1 and K2, K1, K2 together, so that imagine you are transferring the element from the element stiffness matrix 1 to global stiffness matrix. Better to transfer 4 elements. So first 4 elements are, if you consider the rows and column, first 4 element. I am considering the first 4 element. First 4 element belongs to third and fourth column and first and second row. So in the global stiffness matrix, you have to fit those 4 elements in third and fourth column and first and second row, not in starting from the leftmost corner. Most of the beams, most of the bar problem, you have started from leftmost corner for when you're writing the stiffness matrix. It is not true here. So that means the first 4 element, the corresponding boxes will be the third row, third column, fourth column, and correspondingly first row and second row. Same thing is here. third, fourth column, first and second row. Is it the cursor is visible movement? Hello, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Cursor,
Yes,
can
sir.
you see the cursor? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, if you consider this particular part, the third column, fourth column here in the global stiffness matrix, and first row and second row. So those four elements you have to shift it to here. Shift it to here. You have to rewrite the values here. When you come to the next side, the right side. So the right four element that is correspond to first column and second column. The first row and second row, that means it will fit into the first row, first column and first row and second row of the global stiffness matrix. Then goes to another four element, that is third and fourth column, third and fourth row. So then those four elements should goes to third and fourth column and third and fourth row. Similarly, in the last four element belongs to first column and second column, third row and fourth row. The first and second column, this is the first and second column, third and fourth row where it will fit. That will be the final global stiffness matrix. That is the once you are able to write that, then a major problem is solved. Then afterwards, as usual, you have to apply the boundary condition. As boundary condition, we know node 2 is totally fixed, hence no degrees of freedom. Q3 is 0 and Q4 is 0, and node 3 and one more node is also fixed. And one specialty of this particular problem is you should be very careful. They have given roller support here. So roller support, that means it cannot move in the vertical directions, but because of the roller support, it can move along the horizontal direction. So that means this is a node 1. The displacement along horizontal direction is normally referred as the Q1. The displacement along vertical direction is referred as Q2, or degrees of freedom in the horizontal direction is Q1. The displacement along y direction is given by Q2. So Q1 is not equal to 0 because there's a roller is provided. Because of the roller, it can move along the x direction, but it cannot move along the vertical direction because there is a support. So that means we will end with only one unknown. So everything is 0. Only Q1 is unknown. So from that, finding out the value of Q1 is easy because there is only one unknown. So when you're writing the stress, finding out the formula, finding out the stresses for element 1 and element 2, again, the degrees of freedoms are very important. So because we have the formula for stress is given by E by L1, E by length of the element, into minus L1 minus M1 plus L1 plus M1. These values are known, no doubt about this part. But on the last, you have to multiply by the element displacement vector. So element displacement vector. So when you multiply by element displacement vector for the element 1, so it is not Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Most of the time we are writing Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 for the element 1. But as per our case is considered, so element 1 is formed by node 2 and node 1. So node 2 is the ith node, node 1 is jth node. The DOF correspond to ith node is Q3, Q4. Those two should come in the first. Then jth node is Q1 and Q2. Those two comes in the next line. That is, so displacement, normally referred as element displacement vector or local element displacement vector, is not Q1, Q2. It is not Q1, Q2. It is Q3, Q4 and Q2, Q1. It is a vector. That means you have to start from the ith node. So you have to write first. You have to write the DOFs of the ith node. After writing the DOF of the ith node, as per this case, DOF of the ith node is Q3, Q4. In the displacement vector, first two rows will be the DOFs of ith node, that is Q3, Q4. And other two elements are DOF of the jth node. As per this problem is considered, jth node is Q1, Q2. Then already you have all those values you have to find out. Then when you come to element 2, so element 2 is formed by node 1 as well as node 3. So when you're writing the displacement vector for the element 2, So ith node is node 1 and 2, and ith node is node 1. Corresponding displacements are Q1, Q2. That's why, so Q of 2, I have written subscript 2 is equal to Q1, then Q2. Those are correspond to the DOF of ith node for the element 2. Then another two DOFs are the DOF of the jth node. The jth node is third node. So for the third node, corresponding DOFs are Q5 and Q6. That is Q5 and Q6. All values are known. Just you have to multiply. So that part you should be very careful when you're finding out the stresses. The formula remains same. So E by LE, direction cosine minus LE, L minus M, LM, multiply by the element displacement vector. Only in the element displacement vector, you have to give the DOF according to the ith node and jth node. Then as usual, you have to find out the displacement. So now we'll go for the derivation of stiffness matrix for the bar element. That's a potential energy approach. Even for the way I'm taking is for the heat transfer analysis also, this potential energy approach is important. Even for one more module 5 also. So you are deriving the mass matrices by potential energy approach. For that, so I'm almost, it is nothing but a revision of this first second module that already you are done in the class. Only few students were there, but those concepts are very important. Even for the derivation of stiffness matrix for the beam element also, you are used potential energy approach. Even for derivation of the stiffness matrix for the truss element also, you are using the potential energy approach. Almost all chapter you are using the potential energy approach. Complete your finite element analysis package is based on the potential energy approach. So potential energy approach means, so in general, when energy of the system is minimum, so then the system comes to the equilibrium position. So correspondingly, we have the equation KQ is equal to F. We have the KQ is equal to F equation you are using in almost all the type of element. That is based on the potential energy approach. Or system is in the equilibrium condition only when the energy of the system is minimum. We cannot say that it is zero. Energy of the system cannot be zero. Any matter or any material having temperature more than 0 Kelvin, it has some energy. Either it may be kinetic energy, potential energy, or the heat energy. Only when, if you take the material below this 0 Kelvin, or when it comes to the 0 Kelvin, then only energy is zero. But as per our definition of potential, this energy is considered, or the potential energy functional is considered, the system comes to the equilibrium conditions. So only when the energy of the system is the minimum, or rate of change of energy of the system is minimum, or there is no change in the energy. When there is no change in the energy, then system will come to the equilibrium condition. That's why you are writing KQ is equal to F. So when you come to heat transfer, so Q is the field variable, normally referred as field variable. In the case of heat transfer problem, so what is the field variable can you expect from you? What is the field variable in the case of heat transfer? In complete heat transfer approach, so what is the required? Finally, you have to find out the heat flux. What is required to find out? What are the field variable in the case of heat transfer? What are the field variable? What is the field variable in the case of the structural analysis? Structural analysis is nothing but your beam element, bar element. So structural analysis is nothing but what you studied about the beam element, bar element, even torsional element, even bar. All those will come under the structural element. Then there is a fluid element. So fluid element in the 2000, I think yours belongs to 2017 scheme, 17 scheme. This your scheme, that fluid element they have removed. Earlier it was there. Instead of fluid element, they have removed. They have added some additional problems on the vibration. The field variable in the case of structural problem is the displacement. You have to find out the displacement everywhere. So when you're going for the practical approach also, you're finding out the displacement only or deformation. When you're conducting the test in the material testing laboratories also, you are measuring the displacement by using not by thermocouple, by using strain gauges. In the similar way, when you're conducting heat transfer lab also, you are finding out the field variable. Most of the time, we require some temperature. At different point, what is the temperature? At node 1, what is the temperature? At node 2, what is the temperature? So those temperature, you have to note down. You have to determine by using thermocouple. Those are the experimental method. There are analytical method. What method you are following in your regular 6th semester heat transfer subject, that will comes under analytical method. But there is small topic recently they have added numerical methods in heat transfer. Other than small topic one, around 10% of the syllabus, remaining 90% of the complete heat transfer syllabus is based on the analytical method. From analytical method also we can find out the temperature. But when you come to the finite element method, you have to define the temperature. You have to assume the temperature, or you have to define the temperature by some equation like T is equal to A0 plus A1x. That is the assumed polynomial. So that means in heat transfer, the field variable is temperature. Once you know the temperature, we can find out the heat flux. We know that Q is equal to K into delta T by A into by L. So once you know that, so we can find out whatever the parameter, whatever the equation required, we can find out once you know the temperature. When you come to fluid flow, the field variable is the velocity. Even complete your the fluid mechanics and even the turbo machines. Once you know the velocity at different part at the entry of the blade, at the exit of the blade, we know you studied about entry velocity and exit velocity. Once you know those velocities, we can find out how much amount of energy is kinetic energy is converted into the mechanical energy, etc. There, the field variables are the velocities or the field variable. When you come to your bar problems, field variable is the displacement. When you come to heat transfer, field variable is temperature. Once from complete finite element method, you are going to find out temperature at different nodal points. Once you know the temperature, you can find out the heat flow rate or heat flux, everything you can find out. That means complete. So we have KQ is equal to F. That equation you are using in almost all chapters, almost all element. So where KQ is equal to F is based on the assumption that system is in the equilibrium position. So it may be, if it comes to the heat transfer, it is in the thermal equilibrium condition. Even what you studied in your thermodynamics 1, thermodynamics 2, etc. So whatever the equation derived is, it is based on the thermal equilibrium condition. You are assuming that system is in the steady state condition. So only when system is in the steady state conditions, so you are all laws, thermodynamics law 1, thermodynamics law 2, 3, 0th law, whatever it may be, it applies only for the steady state condition. In the similar way, you are assuming that system has minimum energy. It may be potential energy or kinetic energy, or it may be heat energy, or it may be the flow energy. So then only system is in the equilibrium condition. I think you can enter your USN number also. I think 33 students are there. Please enter. The end you may forget to enter now. Enter. I give, because I start the derivations of the bar, the stiffness matrix. Then you have no need to concentrate on this. First you finish the entering your USN number. So now there are different methods are available. So in the first class of finite element analysis, I have written, we have the general physics formula. So all equation what I am doing here is available even in the first module. It belongs to second module. All equations are available, all derivations are available. What I am telling now, those information may not be available. We have the formula for the stiffness. So stiffness is nothing but how much amount of force required to get the unit displacement. So even physics definition, we have K is equal to F by Y. So that means, so you are applied certain amount of load. Imagine you have the assume don't think only in terms of mathematical equation. We assume that there is a spring, even same spring you are studying in machine design also. So you are applied certain amount of force. Imagine you are applied around 100 kg of load to the spring, and if the corresponding deformation, let it be around 10 mm, then stiffness of the spring is 100 divided by 10 mm. That is again 10 Newton per mm. 100 kg and 100 kg per mm is the stiffness. If the spring is having higher stiffness, so I am considering two springs. So one is higher stiffness and one more is lower stiffness. If you consider higher stiffness, if you apply the same 100 kg of load, so what will be the stiffness, the deformation? For the first case, I got 10 mm deformation. So I am considering one more spring. I am applying the same load of 100 kg. Then what will be the deformation? It is less than 10 mm or more than 10 mm for higher stiffness spring. Someone can answer. For higher stiffness spring, the first you are considering spring of low stiffness. For that, the deformation of the spring is only 10 mm. For the second case, you are considering the higher stiffness spring. If you go to automotive garages, etc., you can, especially shock absorber springs or bike shock absorber springs are available. You can see the smaller spring and bigger spring. We can having springs having a bigger that spring radius, smaller spring radius, spring radius. Then for the second case, whether it is 10 mm or less than 10 mm or more than 10 mm, can you answer? Someone can answer. You understood? No. Imagine we have spring 1 and spring 2. The spring 1 is having higher stiffness. For that, you have applied 100 kg of load, we got deformation of 10 mm. For the second spring having lower stiffness, we have applied same 100 kg of load. So what will be the deformation? Whether it is less than 10 mm or more than 10 mm. When spring is having lower stiffness, so deformation will be definitely, it will be the more, instead of 10 mm, we may get higher deformation. Finally, we have the stiffness K is formula is given by F by Y. That's a physics definition. We are not doing any new concept. You are not applying any new concept in finite element analysis. What are the subject you studied? All those equations you are putting in the proper form, or finally you are writing each and every equations what you studied in different subject in the matrix form. Once it is written in the matrix form, writing the program will be easy. That's the main purpose of studying the finite element method. In the finite element method, you are not studying any new engineering concept. Engineering concept you study in different the courses are subject. Now in simple way, your stiffness K is equal to given by, as per your physics definition is considered, K is equal to F by Y. But in finite element method, so Y is replaced by Q. Hence, your K is equal to F by Q. If you rearrange the equation, then you will get, so F is equal to KQ. But in finite element analysis, you are writing KQ is equal to F. That's all. So now, so you can see the diagram. You are considering stiffness matrix. I think PPT is visible now. Yes or no? Yes or no? Someone can respond.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think the previous PPT, I think yesterday I changed the size of the PPT. And the previous PPT is not clear. Clearness it appears as very small screen. Now it fits well here. Now you are considering the bar element. So it is like a fan rod. I am giving the same example. Fan rod. It is fixed at one end. Because of the self weight of the fan, so this is the force applied. External force is maybe not necessarily someone is pulling the fan rod. So because of
this is module 1, sir.
The module 2.
Okay.
So this concept I want to explain those concepts that is very important for understanding the heat transfer. A heat transfer it's a chapter. It is not like other module. So there already heat transfer, the finite element concept applied to heat transfer itself is complex. Then potential energy, applying to potential energy concepts are very easy for structural analysis. And when you use the same potential energy for the heat transfer analysis, then it is more complex. before understanding the potential energy, my purpose is to explain the potential energy concept that will be helpful for your the heat transfer analysis. This part already have done in the second module, that is comes under the truss, this bar element. Already you have used bar element. The stiffness matrix for the bar element is given by AE by L into 1 minus 1 minus 1 minus 1 plus 1. That same thing you are deriving here once again. So my purpose of doing this is you have to thoroughly understand what exactly the concept of potential energy, so that we can easily use those potential energy approach in heat transfer problem as well as your vibration problems. Vibration problem in the fifth module is vibration. So there again you are using the same potential energy concept. Other than that, so you are in the, especially when it comes to your heat transfer, because all those today's is mainly concentrating on the heat transfer. Even though I am doing some small derivation from module 2, keeping it in mind. So these concepts are very important. Again, heat transfer. So you are most of the time you are not going for the elimination approach. So you are going for the penalty approach. And in most of the heat transfer problems, the temperature, it is not zero boundary conditions. When it comes to structural mechanics or your bar, beam, etc., so one end is fixed. Even in the case of bar, you are saying that this end is fixed. So hence your U1 or Q1 is equal to 0. But in the heat transfer problem, most of the time, are you getting that boundary condition T is equal to 0? Just you are studying heat transfer, no? Anyway, you are getting T is equal to 0. So only in rarest case you may get T is equal to 0, but most of the time either T will be T naught or T infinity or ambient temperature. So it is not most of the heat transfer problems, whether you are studying by even your 6th semester heat transfer or even in finite element analysis also, boundary conditions are not like temperature is equal to 0, but whatever the element you studied from bar, beam or trusses or torsion, you are assuming that one boundary condition is 0 boundary condition. When 0 boundary condition is there, you are easily applying elimination approach. But when for non-zero boundary condition like T is equal to T infinity in your heat transfer, that is comes under non-boundary condition. At one end or one bar is steel rod is exposed to the atmosphere. At the other end of the steel bar is exposed to the ambient temperature. Then so that will be T2 is equal to T infinity. It is not zero boundary condition. It comes under non-zero boundary condition. For that again, so whether you are applying for boundary condition like your penalty approach or even the elimination approach also, there are formulas are slightly differs. So that's why I may do 1 or 2 problems on bars to explain the concept of boundary condition when for non-zero boundary condition. Suddenly, if you do some problems on heat transfer on non-zero boundary condition, they may not understand. But earlier unit scheme, so now it is a module scheme. Heat transfer is the complete one module. The earlier days, the heat transfer is 1 unit. I think most of the time it is 8th unit. So each unit they're asking 1 questions. There are 8 questions. Out of 8 questions, student has to answer any 5 questions. But when it comes to module scheme, so you don't get that kind. In the earlier syllabus, in the unit scheme, you have a chance. By studying only 5 units, you can attend 100 marks. But now that concept is not available. It is in the module scheme. So each and every module you have to study. But earlier days, at least students are leaving that part, heat transfer. Most of the time they are leaving, hoping that it will be difficult. But at present, no option. You have to study the heat transfer. Now, when you come to bar element, I have another 50 minutes. I'll explain the concept. So now, even though this bar end, one end of the bar is fixed, but as for your finite element packages are considered, those packages are not designed for the one particular application. Those are the general application. So even when you derive the stiffness matrix for the bar element also, even though this is fixed, still you are writing that at node 1, the displacement is U1. At node 2, displacement is U2. So even though we are not applying any load at node 1, still you are showing the load F1 and F2. Because some conditions, the load may be acting at node 2 also. Some condition, there may be displacement also. You are writing the generalized software program or FE packages. That's why those are general. There in the package, there is no boundary condition. There is no separate package for bars. There is no separate for packages for beam, etc. There is a general packages. As a user, you have to apply boundary condition. Now, so don't assume that even though at node 1, the U1 is equal to 0, displacement is 0, but still you are retaining U1 only. Till the end, you are retaining the U1 only, because so in some cases, there may be displacement at node 1 also. And corresponding at node 1, node 2, you are familiar. At node 1, the displacement is F1. At node 2, the displacement is F2. So that part you are not familiar. This part, even you are studied in even material science also, you studied in mechanics of material also, even some other design 1 or design 2 also, you studied some concept. So you are talking about the talking about the strain energy. The strain energy is nothing but a deformation energy. The energy is stored in the material because of the deformed position. So imagine you have a spring is compressed. So when it is a spring is compressed, so you have spent some amount of energy. Imagine you spent around 100 kilowatt of energy, 100,000 watt of energy. So out of 1000 watt of energy, some amount of energy is spent for the work done, because spring is at a height of, let it be height of the spring is let it be 100 mm. So it is compressed to 60 mm. So when you're moving the load from 100 mm to 60 mm, when you are pushing down, so there is some amount of work is done. The total deformation of spring is the 40 mm. To deform the spring by 40 mm, some amount of work is already done. You have spent some amount of energy out of 100 kilo, there's 1000 watts, there around some amount of energy spent, let it be around 400 watt of energy spent for the work done. Then now spring is compressed. What happens to that remaining 600 watts of energy? So that amount of energy is available within the spring itself. So that energy is referred as the deformation energy. That energy is referred as the strain energy. That energy we can find out by conducting how much plotting stress strain or load versus deformation diagram, or in simple way. So because you are applying the load within the elastic limit, so your complete finite element analysis based on just comes under linear finite element analysis. You are not going for non-linear finite element analysis. So whatever the load you are applying, you are assuming that load is within the elastic limit itself. Hence, that equilibrium equation KQ is equal to F is holds good. Your Hooke's law is also holds good. You are using the Hooke's law also some cases. All those equations holds good when load is within the elastic limit. So because of that, so area below the stress strain curve, curve is nothing but your strain energy. So base is epsilon, the height is sigma. So then area of the triangle is half into sigma into epsilon. That already you have discussed many times this equation. So now that you are talking about the potential energy functional, it is not just potential energy. Don't say that what you studied in your some other subject, potential energy is because of virtue of its position. So not necessarily it is not virtue of its position. So in the finite element analysis, the potential energy is given by strain energy plus work potential. It is not just referred as a potential energy, it is referred as a potential energy functional. The strain energy is given by half into epsilon into sigma. Half into epsilon into sigma, that is the strain energy. So what is work potential? There are two springs here. Work potential is nothing but work done. So node 2 is moved by distance u2. So when node 2 is moved by the distance u2, load applied at node 2 is F2. So we know that work done is equal to force into distance. The force is F2 and distance moved is u2. The work potential at node 2 is F2 u2. In the similar way, load applied at node 1 is F1. The node 1 is displaced by amount u1. Then work done is equal to force into distance. That we have the standard formula for work done, physics formula. So work done is equal to force into distance. At node 1, the force is F1, displacement is u1. F1, u1, F2, u2. That is nothing but your work potential. So we have potential energy functional. The functional is a function of function is referred as functional. That we know studied some concept in this mathematics functional. The best example is your result. So it's a functional because each subject mark is depending upon your main examination marks as well as the internal marks. So like that, your final score is depending upon the each subject score. So that is also considered as a functional. So we have strain energy and work potential. The work potential is mainly because we are considering two noded element. So work potential at node 1 plus work potential at node 2. So either if strain energy is positive, other will be negative. So now we can write the same equation. Yeah, area below the stress strain curve, that also can be written in the integral form. So mainly integration is used for finding out the area below the curve. So we can write it in the integral form for the complete volume. So whatever the equation you are writing strain energy, that is nothing but the strain energy stored in the unit volume of the spring. You are compressing the spring. When you compress, the strain energy stored in the unit volume of the spring is given by this magnitude, half into epsilon into sigma. But for the complete volume, you have to go for the integration. That equation you are slightly modifying. We are finding out the strain energy is nothing but that already explained the area of the triangle. So half into sigma into epsilon. That sigma is replaced by E into epsilon. E into epsilon. So now, so E is E into epsilon. Once you do that, so we'll get half into E into epsilon square. But epsilon, we have a general formula. Epsilon is nothing but a strain. We have general mechanics of the material formula, delta dl by L. But the finite element analysis, change in length is given by U, and the original length is L. But original, strictly speaking, you are considering a small elemental strip. For the small elemental strip, change in length is given by del U. The length of the elemental strip is del X. Now, in finite element analysis or in theory of elasticity, there is one more subject, theory of elasticity. That is the prerequisite for understanding the finite element method. But theory of elasticity definition or the finite element definition of your strain is del U by del X, not dl by L for the strain. So now strain energy is given by half into E into del U by del X. The del U by del X, we have the square. That is the strain equation for the strain energy. So now same thing is shown here. We have epsilon square. The epsilon square is replaced by del U by del X, the whole square. We have the equation here in integral form. So in finite element analysis, we have general formula. Either you are writing in the integral form or differential form, or in some cases integral differential form. Finally, you are writing the strain energy stored in the string or any member or segment in the integral form. We have del U by, we have epsilon square. Epsilon square is replaced by del U by del X, the whole square. Now, work done already explained. The work done is equal to force into distance, F into U. At node 1, F1 into U1 plus at node 2, F2 into U2. Finally, we have that is minus because one is positive, another will be negative. So that is the work potential will be always considered as negative. Already amount of energy already spent. So imagine like you are giving the loan to someone else, that is a negative. Whatever you have, that will be the positive. Some amount of energy is spent for deforming that cannot be recovered. So that energy is nothing but a work done. Some amount of energy stored in the spring because of the compression, that is nothing but a strain energy that can be recovered. Once you remove the load, the spring will come back to the original position because of the strain energy stored in the spring. So now finally you are writing the equation for potential energy functional. One component is strain energy and one more component is work potential. Already we have the equation for strain energy. One more concept, one more term is the work potential. So F1 U1 is nothing but work done at node 1. F2 U2 is work done at node 2. That is nothing but force into distance. The node 1 is moved by distance U1. The force is F1. Now you have to apply. Now you are assuming the displacement function, because you are assuming the linear displacement function U is equal to A0 plus A1. There are two unknowns. A0 is one unknown and A1 is one more unknown. Already you are used for beams also, you are used the same equation, and most of the time you are using the same equation. Now there are two boundary conditions. So at x is equal to 0, the displacement is you are writing as U1. There are two unknowns here, A0 and A1. We require two boundary conditions or nodal condition. At x is equal to 0, displacement at node 1 is U1. At x is equal to L, the displacement is U2. By using those two boundary conditions, we can get the value of A0 and A1. So that is mathematical concept. Finally, we get A0 is equal to U1 and A1 is equal to U2 minus U1 by L. So now we have the equation for A1, we have the equation for U1. If we substitute the value of A0 here and equation 7, if we substitute the value of A1 in the equation 7, we end with U is equal to U1. This is the equation for the displacement. It is a assumed displacement. You are writing the displacement in the mathematical form. So in a practical experimentation method, you are measuring the displacement. So in the case of your analytical method like mechanics of material or design, we have formula for getting the displacement. We have Y max is equal to 48 EI by so and so. Equations are available depending on the condition, where you are calculating the displacement by using the formula. But when you come to numerical method or finite element method, so we have defined the equation, polynomial equation for getting the displacement. But in the
isn't U1 0, sir?
Huh?
U1.
So now that's why beginning I told, just to understand, I consider one bar element. So it is a bar element. So in the finite element packages are designed for any boundary condition. Some cases node 1 is also moved. Imagine if the fan is not mounted properly, if you apply the fan weight is very high, the fan, even though theoretically you are saying that it is fixed, so it is not fixed, because if the weight is more, that the one end of the fan may slightly come down, because we have fastening method, assembling, etc. The fan rod is maybe one end of the fan rod may be mounted on the rods, steel rods used for roof, etc. It can also comes down. Even you are assuming that building foundation column is fixed at the bottom. During earthquake, if soil is not hard, that also can move in the downward direction. That's why finite element packages are not, because these are the equations are used for the finite element packages. So those are the generalized equations. So when you're writing the finite element packages, it is not meant for only bar. To understand that, I have written the example of bar. This some bar element 1 is fixed, but it is not fixed, because once you fixed, then this particular package or program can be used for only when one end of the bar is fixed and other end is free. But finite element packages are general packages that can be used for any type of boundary condition. Understood now? For initially we have considered physical system, it is not fixed. When you come to the problems, you can say that it is fixed, but U1 is not 0 here. When you derive the equation, when you're preparing the packages, etc., U1 is not equal to 0. Still, U1 has small value. There may be small movement at node 1. In simple way, there may be small the displacement at node 1 also. That's why in the case of penalty approach, so you are not saying that at node 1 Q1 is equal to 0 in the penalty approach. There may be small amount of deformation or displacement. Same penalty approach is used in heat transfer. I hope you understood. So for theoretically, so most of the time you are assuming that U1 is equal to 0, but practically there may be small amount. U1 may be very, very close to 0, 0.000001, etc., 1 or 2, etc. But when you derive the equation, you are not assuming that U1 is equal to 0. So finally, we have the equation for U, but in this equation, we have del U by del X. Finally, why you are doing all those things? We required equation for del U by del X. We have the del U by del X the whole square. So now we have the U. You have the equation for U. So now we require del U by del X. We have the equation 12. So equation 12, you have to differentiate with respect to X. So once you differentiate this equation X, we will get del U by del X. This is the del U by del X. That same del U by del X is substituted in the integral equation. We have U2 minus U1 by L. That is nothing but del U by del X. You can see here. So del U by del X is U2 minus U1 divided by L. So U2 minus U1 divided by L. There is a whole square. So now this equation remains same. Finally, we have pi. This is the total energy in the system or total potential energy. But don't think that potential energy is so your rho into G into H, not because of virtue of its position. The potential energy consists of strain energy and work done. If strain energy is normally taken as positive, other will be negative, because work done is already amount is energy spent. That energy cannot be recovered back. That's why it is taken as a negative. So your potential energy is not rho g h. So this is the equation for the potential energy. So now when you come to the principle of minimum potential energy, you are saying principle of minimum potential energy. The system is in the equilibrium condition only when the system has minimum energy or minimum potential energy. That means we have the equation for pi. So if the rate of change of energy is minimum, I'm talking about the rate of change of energy is minimum. I'm not talking about the energy is zero. So when rate of change of energy is minimum or zero, then system is in the equilibrium condition. So we have pi. If you differentiate del pi by del u, so that means the variation of the energy. So that's why we are studying about the variation. We have separate subject itself, variational finite element analysis, or we are concentrating more and more on what is the variation of the energy in the system. Finally, we want to know when system comes to the equilibrium. When variation of the energy is minimum, then only system comes to the minimum. That variation is nothing but differentiation. If you differentiate this, the differentiation is nothing but rate of change of your energy with respect to parameter u1. If it is zero, then your system is in equilibrium condition. Or if variation of the energy is zero, I'm not talking about the energy is equal to zero, the variation of the energy is equal to zero, then system will comes to the halt or in the equilibrium condition. Based on that, you are getting the value of kq is equal to f. When variation of the energy is zero, system is in equilibrium. When system is in equilibrium, you will get kq is equal to f equation. Now this is the equation for pi. If you differentiate is nothing but we can see here. You have the equation for pi. So you are writing the minimize the potential energy. Minimization is nothing but rate of change of energy. Potential energy is equal to zero. That is normal reference del pi by del ui is equal to zero. Then system is in the equilibrium condition. So now, so that means we have in this equation there are two unknowns. U1 and U2 are unknowns. U1 and U2 are unknown. To get those two unknowns, we require two equations. One equation we are getting when del pi by del u1 is equal to 0. We are getting one more equation when equating del pi, the differentiating the potential energy pi with respect to u2. So finally we end with two equations. One is equation in simple way. I will finish within 2 minutes. We have the equation for the energy. So system is in equilibrium condition only when variation of the energy is zero. So variation of the energy is zero. That is nothing but the differentiation of this energy is zero. So once you differentiate with respect to u1, we'll get one equation, that is equation 16. If you differentiate the same energy equation with respect to u2, we'll get one more equation, equation number 17. So now I am writing equation number 16 and 17 together. So that equation number 16 and 17, I am writing in the matrix form. You can see here, AE by L into U1. These two equations you are writing in the matrix form. If you multiply this matrix and this vector, the finally you can get back the equation 16 and 17. That means we have equation number 16 and 17. If you are writing the equation number 16 is based on the variation of energy with respect to U1 is equal to 0. So one more equation is variation of the energy pi with respect to U2 is equal to 0. So by those two equations, you are writing the matrix form. We can AE is the common factor. We can take it outside. So once you take KAE outside, then you will get K of the bar element is equal to AE by L into so and so. That is a matrix. That is the based on the potential energy approach. There are other approach also finding out the same matrix by regular physics method also. We can get the same matrix. That is not required now. If you go for potential energy approach, that is sufficient. It is used in almost all chapters. Those potential approaches used in heat transfer also, where in the case of heat transfer, the potential energy is nothing but the thermal energy stored inside the system is nothing but potential energy in the case of heat transfer. When you come to vibration, the vibration energy stored inside the system is nothing but potential energy. I hope time is almost coming to 3:35. I'll stop the session. So next Monday onwards, I'm starting straight away. What I'll do is I'll do one or two derivations first. So after doing derivations, once again, I'll do small problems from the by using penalty approach by simple bar problems. Then I'll go for heat transfer. Otherwise, straight away, if you start heat transfer problems based on penalty approach, you may not understand. That's why I do some simple problems from the bar. Then I'll start with heat transfer. But Monday, first two classes, I do derivation related to heat transfer, finite element analysis of the heat transfer. Okay, thank you. I'll leave the session. If you have any doubt, we can discuss. This derivation is also available in ALES textbook or any most of the textbook is available. Don't worry about that. But may not be expansion may not be available. All equations are available. That part I'm writing.